Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe they can do what they want, when they want. And in today's episode, we've got Karens harassing the blind, trying to get people fired, getting trapped in elevators. It's absolutely wild in this one. I hope you enjoy the stories. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So to start, I'm legally blind. I have no eyesight in one eye and very little sight in the other, but I can see a little. I walk with a sight cane, but generally do need some help to get around. When this happened, I was at the airport in Cincinnati, returning from a business trip, and I asked the person helping me to take me to a Starbucks since I was desperate for caffeination. She put me in line, and she said she'd be back for me in 20 minutes. So I'm just standing in line when out of nowhere, this woman starts creeping on my right side. Then a little more and a little more. This woman was trying to pull cutsies on me, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't think so. So I slide my cane to my right, effectively preventing said cutsies. The woman realizes she's been caught and she huffs a bit, having her plan of cutting in front of a blind person at 6:45 a.m. effectively thwarted. I then get my drink and take a seat, and that's when cutsy Karen sits down at my table and she waves her hand in front of my face. And then we have the following exchange. Karen says to me, "So, are you blind or what?" I respond, pardon? Karen says, like, how much can you see? Are you faking? Just how blind are you? I tell her, well, I saw enough to know that you were attempting to cut in front of a blind person earlier. Hearing me say that, Karen says, so, you can see. She then waves her hand in front of my face again, and she says, well, can you see this? Why do you need a cane if you can see? Are you faking? Is it macular degeneration or what? I just stop her right there and say, ma'am, it's too early for this. Please leave my table. I don't owe you an explanation or any part of my medical history. I'm trying to enjoy my drink in peace while I wait for my guide. At that, Karen says, geez, I was just asking. She then huffs and then she leaves, but not before saying to somebody, there's a fake blind person sitting there. And that pissed me off. I don't know why people see someone who's disabled and feel entitled to their story or their medical devices. I've had people grab my cane and pull me where they want me to go. And some parents think it's cute to let their kids grab my cane. It's not. And the last 4th of July, a random person saw me walking with my family and she grabbed my arm to drag me to her son who had recently lost his eyesight. So I could tell him my story, and she told me to tell him it's going to be okay. My daughter let her know how horribly inappropriate that was, and the woman was super offended because she was saying, I'm just trying to help my son adapt to his new reality. Like, she thought I owed that to her by daring to be blind. Disabled people aren't sideshows, we're just trying to live our lives. Some people's self-entitlement never ceases to amaze me, guys, and you know that woman only confronted and harassed OP because she failed to cut in line. Like, trying to sneak in front of a blind person has gotta be one of the lowest things a person can do, Karen. Like, what in the world? And don't even get me started on the, oh, there's a fake blind person sitting there. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous when people realize they've lost and they resort to saying over-the-top dumb things like that. So this is still by far the most mortifying experience I've ever had. This story includes my good friend, her mom, and me. Now, a thing about me is I'm female, and I struggle with this disorder called trichotillomania. It's basically where you use hair pulling as a coping mechanism when things get stressful in life. At the time this happened, I was almost completely bald because of it. I had patches of wiry, regrowing hair, and some completely bald patches. It wasn't a pretty sight, and I often wore a beanie or hat 24/7 to cover it up. Luckily, I had really supportive, understanding friends who did so much to cheer me up on a daily basis. So one of my friends, who we'll call Gina, invites me to her house for dinner one night. I had known her family since we were kids, so her mom was very familiar with me. I was also aware of her mom's strict dinner table policies. They were pretty acceptable, no coats, hats, elbows on the table, etc. But I figured that my friend had explained my situation to her and she would understand. This was definitely not the case. When dinner was ready and we were called for, as soon as I sat down, you could tell that Mom was uncomfortable with me wearing the beanie at the table. She then says to me, "Hey, so would you mind taking off your hat at the dinner table? It's quite rude, darling." Me, immediately uncomfortable, start thinking how to explain the situation. That's when my friend Gina says, "Mom, it's okay, just leave it. Let's make an exception today." And this is when Mom snaps and says, "Don't you talk back to me like that. This is my house and my dinner table, and I don't allow outdoor clothes during meal times. So take off the beanie or you don't eat." At this I say, "I'm really sorry, but I would prefer to." She then stops me right there and she gets up saying, "This is ridiculous. Just take off the hat. You know my dinner table rules." When I didn't budge, she grabs the top of my beanie and she starts pulling it off. My hands, of course, dart to my head, trying to resist. She then went to make a comment about it being absolutely nonsense what I was doing, but she promptly shut up as soon as she revealed my battered, patchy, and bald head. Her mouth kind of hung open for a second or two, and the rest of the table just stayed silent. My friend Gina, bless her, was furious with her mom. She yanked my precious beanie from her hands and quickly rushed me away from the table. Nothing much happened after this incident. My friend was really apologetic for what her mom did, and I was honestly too shocked and embarrassed to know what to say. She just discreetly let me out of the house because I wasn't comfortable in that environment anymore. I don't want to get into another story with this, but the mom started to exercise her gossipy Karen nature around other parents. In the end, she did give me a half-ass apology. It was awkward, but I accepted it. Entitlement is a hell of a drug, guys, and in my opinion, Mom went way over the top with "my house, my rules, no exceptions." Like, my goodness, reading this post, I was mortified for OP. Like, it's one thing to ask someone to take off their beanie, but it's another to get aggressive, take matters into your own hands, and start grabbing and pulling at somebody. Like, is that not considered assault? And the half-assed apology at the end, let me know if you guys think that was enough. So back in the early 2000s, I was the IT manager for a small company. In May of one year, I hired Robin, the first female in our department. She was a church friend of one of my team, and he recommended her. I made sure she met the other team member and gave them time without me present. I not only got his feedback, I made sure she had a good vibe from him before I hired her. Everyone got along, and things were running smoothly for several months. The Friday before Thanksgiving, we had a company get-together, and everyone's spouses came. That's when Robin met my husband. I then left on Saturday for a 2-week vacation. When I got back, the owner calls me before I could even boot up my computer and asked me to come to his office. Well, when I was gone, Robin accused me of harassment, the touchy kind. HR did their investigation and they said they could find no evidence of it because it never happened, but offered to transfer her to another department. She declined. Then she said I was an incompetent manager. My style was to assign projects based on people's skills or interests and let them decide amongst themselves who was going to do what. The other two people in the department loved the freedom and trust. Robin apparently did not. The owner also said that she couldn't point out any specific request she made that I was unresponsive to, nor could she think of any time that I singled her out or treated her differently. The fact that I wasn't micromanaging her made me a bad manager in her eyes. So my boss told her that might be new for her, but that's how he managed too. He then suggested that she tell me she needs more oversight. She said she wasn't comfortable having that conversation, so he offered to do it for her. And that's when she said she couldn't work with me because I'm gay, and that I need to be fired. My boss asked her if I said or did anything inappropriate, and she said no. In fact, prior to meeting my husband, she thought I was talking about a roommate when I referred to him. She then told the owner that me having a husband was against her religious beliefs, and she never would have taken the job had she known of my homosexuality. She told him that my presence created a hostile work environment for her, so he had to fire me. She was also outraged that the owner dared call himself a Christian, and would accept somebody so blatantly sinful. The owner told her to get over it or quit because he wasn't firing me over her personal beliefs. So with that, she quit. When I got back to my desk, the guy who recommended her said that she started stirring stuff up at church, trying to get him thrown out of the congregation since he knew I was gay. Long story short, the preacher asked her to not come back. I was blown away by Robin's sense of entitlement though, but I was thankful that everyone, the owner, HR, and my team, even an unknown preacher, had my back. Thank goodness the owner recognized Karen's shenanigans, right? Like, did she really think that she gets to dictate who a company could hire or who could attend a church? And seriously, I wish she was fired on the spot before she could quit. Like, in what world are you living in, Karen, where you think your opinion on who the owner hires or doesn't hire actually matters? But imagine that, right? Lying to have somebody fired merely for just existing. Some people's sense of self-entitlement knows no bounds. So I work for a catering company, and this happened sometime last year, but due to it being an open incident, I held off on sharing it until now. In the spring of last year, I get a call from the delivery driver that somebody had brake checked them on the main road into town, and then sped off. Luckily, it was after the delivery was completed, so nothing delicate was on board. I take down the plate, vehicle info, all the standard stuff for an incident of road rage. But before I can finish up the call, the brake checkers call into our main office. Before I can complete the standard spiel, they immediately cut me off and they're screaming. I basically say, "Hello, you've reached XYZ Catering." And this is when an irate man screams and says, "Your a-hole driver tried to run us off the road." And here's something that's worth noting. I know the driver. They're the least aggressive, most careful driver I've ever seen. They regularly deliver items like wedding cakes without so much as disturbing them. If anything, they're too cautious. They're not running people off the road. So I tell him, "Excuse me, sir, but I don't think our delivery van would have tried to run you off the road intentionally. Were you perhaps traveling in the vehicle's blind spot? There are warning signs all over the van to avoid lingering in blind spots when the driver signals. And this is about as far as I get, trying to be diplomatic." And that's when I hear Karen. She shouts and says, "Why are you defending this a-hole? This is some minimum waged idiot that probably doesn't even belong in this country." The man pipes up and says, "Yeah, your driver tried to kill us, and you're making excuses? This is outrageous." So I tell them, "Sir, ma'am, please calm down. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things." And this is when the man pulls out, "Do you know who I am? I will shut your whole operation down. Now you listen to me. You'd better be ready to give us some hefty compensation, or we will take this to the police and we'll sue you." At that I respond, "Compensation?" And this is when Karen says, "Well, we have a party coming up, and if you agree to cater it for free, we might let this all go." Now I just pause to try to process this bizarre demand. And that's when the man says, "Hey stupid, did you hear what my wife was saying? Do you speak proper English?" It's at this point I've had enough. I had put the pieces together as soon as they demanded compensation. And I say to them, "Are you license plate, blah blah blah, gold, 4-door, crossover?" And the man responds, "Are you the a-hole idiot driving that big stupid van?" I respond, "No, but the driver called in and said you brake checked them just before you called in." Well, we'll see what the facts are once the vehicle's camera footage is reviewed. Our delivery vehicle is equipped with 360-degree recording, so let me pull that up. And the man loses it and he says, "That's BS. There's no such thing." Now, unlucky for him, there is. It's similar to the 360-degree Tesla cam. So I pull up the footage from the fleet management software and then proceed to see the gold car in question not just traveling in the blind spot, they were fully behind the vehicle. They then sped up to try to cut it off when the driver turned on the signal to change lanes. I then say to them, "Sir, I can clearly see that your wife's in the driver's seat. She sped up after our driver signaled to change lanes, entering the vehicle's blind spot. Then, instead of slowing down when the vehicle started to change lanes, you kept trying to push up until you were forced on the shoulder." Karen says, "No, that's not what happened." I respond, "I can clearly see you zipping into the left lane, overtaking the van, cutting in front of my driver, and then slamming on your brakes. After reviewing this footage, I think it's a great idea to get police involved. At this point, both of them are sputtering, trying to come up with something to say. And that's when the man says, "Hang up the phone." They disconnected the call. I had a great laugh and then made an online police report. I'll bet their insurance premiums will never be the same again. So I'm an elevator technician. When they break, I'm the one who fixes them. When parts wear out, I replace them. You get it. The other day, I was on a job replacing a worn-out emergency light. Back in the day, it was a habit to use the battery of the emergency light to power the elevator's siren system. Modern emergency lights have different voltages being LED, so I can't use the old way of connecting everything. So I have to wire everything from scratch, including new battery and siren, which is no big deal. It just takes a little longer to complete the task. And I also want to note that this is a 3-stop elevator: ground floor, first, and second. I start with hanging up all of my out-of-order signs and then start working on the ground floor. 5 minutes in, I just disassembled the old piece and the story begins. In comes Karen, a woman in her mid-40s who can walk perfectly fine carrying one barely filled grocery bag. The woman's with her daughter, who's around 15 years old. She comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, is the elevator broken again?" I tell her, "Not exactly, ma'am. I'm changing this." I then show her the new emergency light and tell her because the old one wasn't working anymore. It'll probably take an hour to complete. And this is when Karen says, "Well, how am I supposed to get my groceries upstairs?" Me, looking at her bag, give her the "are you effing kidding me" look. This is when the daughter says, "Mom, seriously, let's take the stairs. It's 2 floors. The woman refuses, saying, "No. I pay for this elevator, so I'm going to use it right now." Hearing that, the daughter sighs, and she says, "Mom, I'm going up." She then takes the stairs, and the woman says to me again, "How long is it gonna take?" I tell her, "Like I said, ma'am, about an hour." Well, the woman then sits her ass down on a bench in the hallway, waiting for me to finish. She then says, "I'll watch you to make sure you're not effing around." And I'm thinking, really? So I do my thing in the cabin, not hurrying at all. I mount the new light to the ceiling, pack my things to go 1 floor up to start the wiring on the top of the cabin. And this is when Karen says, "Are you done yet?" I tell her, "No ma'am, I still have to wire things up top of the elevator." She says, "No, I can see you're done. You're packing your things." I tell her I have to take my bag 1 floor up so I can start on the wiring. And this is when she asked, "Can't I use it now?" To which I respond, "No ma'am, you can't. That's exposed wiring up there. If you use it now, you can cause a short and you will get stuck. It's really not safe." The woman groans and says, "Fine." She then sits back down on the bench, seriously pissed off. I just take my bag and make my way upstairs. As soon as I stand in front of the first floor door, I hear the door on the ground floor close. And sure enough, Karen went into the elevator and she tried to take it upstairs. And I'm thinking, oh hell no, I wasn't having any of that. I take my emergency key, and as soon as the elevator starts moving, I open the lock, cutting the safety chain, and the elevator comes to a sudden stop. And that scared the crap out of Karen, and she starts screaming. I open the door, and in my most fake surprised voice I yell, "Oh no, what have you done?" while calmly pressing the emergency stop on the top of the elevator. Yep, this thing isn't going anywhere soon. I tell her, "This is exactly why I said the elevator's unsafe to use. I'll do my best to get it working again as soon as possible, but you made a mess up here, so I don't know how long it's gonna take." And here's a side note, there was no mess, but I couldn't resist teaching her a lesson. Karen starts swearing and yelling and making a scene at this point. I just tell her I'll be right back. I have to go to the engine room to see if I can get it working again. So I close the door and make my way up. On the second floor, the daughter comes out of the apartment because of the yelling of her mom. I quickly explain what happened, and the daughter raises her voice and says, "Oh no, please get her out of there." But then the daughter comes closer and she whispers to me, "Don't hurry, make her suffer," which is music to my ears. I smile, give her a thumbs up, and make my way to the engine room. I call my supervisor to explain the situation in case she files a complaint. In the engine room, I start playing around with the fuses, putting her in the dark because, yeah, I haven't connected the light yet. I play with Karen for about half an hour before turning off the emergency stop I activated, which causes the elevator to synchronize to the lowest floor, and then wait for the doors to open. I then tell Karen, please don't ever do that again. And I can see Karen, she's white as a sheet, shaking, and she says, no, I won't. She then takes the stairs and goes inside. I never heard from her again. I just calmly finish my job and leave the building with a smile on my face. Mission accomplished. Yeah, can't say she didn't deserve that half hour of absolute terror. And that's what she gets, right? Why, Karen? Why are you even going into an elevator that's clearly under repair and you were told by the repairman to not use it? Elevators are one of the worst places to get trapped in. And I just love how the daughter was so over mom's crap and she was like, just make her suffer, she deserves it. That said though, that was a really gutsy move by OP though, because in this case, I think Karen could have ended his career, even though it was a good lesson that was taught. It would have been really easy to get OP canned for pulling a stunt like that on somebody. I'm just glad it all worked out in the end. I used to work at a bar as the only female security. They had some very bad things happen when a man followed a woman to the bathroom, so they needed a woman that could keep an eye out on what happened in there. That said, this bar got in legal trouble all the time. The bathroom thing above, the fire marshal closing them on busy weekends for being over capacity, and the liquor board had pulled their license once already for over-serving and serving minors with pretty obvious fake IDs. I was one of the new securities hired to help resolve all this. It was bad. We had to be trained by a government person and get a card to prove we knew how to spot and stop over-serves, and spot fake IDs. But I think the real reason they hired us was to have scapegoats on the ready for the next time they did this. So I worked there a while, doing my best, but the owner's wife was the worst. The woman was always drunk and always had her friends in the bar and bent the rules for them. The woman thought she was Lady Jesus and we should all be kissing her feet because she was the owner's wife. Now, I mostly stayed out of her way and had no issues, but many coworkers complained about her. One night, some dude gets sick on the way to the bathroom. I cut him off, and he ends up getting escorted out by his less drunk friends. This is when I notice a man sitting at the bar watching this. The man had creased slacks, a jacket indoors on a summer night, and no drink in his hand at a busy dance club. I start watching him and then notice the badge under his jacket, and I think to myself, oh, he's here to watch for over-serving. A little while later, a woman came to the bathroom. She was drunk enough that she needed to hold onto the walls for dear life. I cut her off. So she screams at me, and then she goes into the bathroom and tries to wash off the giant black Sharpie X's from the back of both of her hands. I warned her that she'll be kicked out of the club if she continues. She just screams again and staggers out of the bathroom. About 5 minutes later, the owner's wife is in my face, and she's screaming. Apparently, the woman I cut off was one of her best friends, attending the bachelorette party in the VIP section, and I was somehow supposed to know that she was VIP. I was also apparently supposed to break the law for her because she was VIP. So she and I start a screaming match, where I inform her that her husband had hired me to make sure the law was followed. I also inform her about the police officer at the bar, but she screams in my face to shut your damn mouth and get out of my bar. She then fires me on the spot. So I decide, you know what, I'll go. And here's the thing, I didn't bother waiting to see if her husband agreed because I knew she wore the pants. I just shut my mouth and I left the bar. I walked past the cop, still sitting at the end of the bar near the bathrooms where the screaming match had taken place. I made eye contact with him, gave a slight nod, to which he responded by looking at the boss's wife, rolling his eyes, and then smiling at me as I left. They got shut down almost immediately that night for over-serving the bachelorette party. And this time, they went out of business because of too many strikes against them. You know, people finding out after effing around has gotta be the most delicious dish that can be served. And I really want to know how the owner reacted when he found out it was his wife who got the business shut down. Like, what? You fired the person who was hired specifically to keep my business alive? Like, how do you even make up for that? That said though, my absolute favorite part about this story was the guy sitting at the bar practically wearing a giant hat that said, "I'm definitely not a cop." And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where OP's boss fires them, thinking they're worthless, and they practically own the business. It's such a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.